Yo, what is up, boys? Welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be doing a Kekvin video. Today, we're going to be reacting to a video made by the YouTuber FL2R called Honkai Star Rail is Getting More Demanding. This was a video that blew up over the past couple days. I think it has 72k views, which is a lot of views for a Star Rail video nowadays. So I'm really interested to see what they have to say about the game. If you are looking forward to this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and boys, let's get into some reactions today. Let's do this. I do have a general idea of what they're going to be talking about in this video, and I do want to input some of my own opinions, but nonetheless, let's get in to the video here today. Honkai Star Rail is getting more demanding. Why is that?
All right, so let me ask you a question. Do you think we get enough pulls in HSR? I mean, obviously.
No. The thing is, I can't speak because I can't speak from like a free-to-play perspective, but I think it's like 80, 90 a patch if I had to guess. And I don't think that's enough in the current meta of the game because the demand is so high nowadays. I would say no. It's always just nice to have more, to be honest.
Of course, you can roll for your next anime girlfriend or whatever, but I wanted to actually explore the current state of the game a little bit and see what we actually need those pulls for and try to see if we really do need more or not. What really got this on my mind was thinking back to how HSR felt when it first came out. I remember it being a game that was actually praised for the amount of pulls we got. At least compared to Genshin anyway, since that's what came before.
Bro, on launch, it was cinema pulls because you didn't require as much to beat the end game. Now you require so much to beat it that it doesn't feel like enough. But back 1.0 to 2.0, it felt like it was generous, and it was at the time. It really was.
Back then, honestly, it felt like you were able to get pretty much everyone you wanted within reason, and at least in my experience, it also felt like I had enough extra to get a light cone every now and then. Now,
bro, I didn't spend money on the game for like a whole year. Maybe not a whole year. Probably like a couple months because I didn't need to because I was winning every 50-50 and I just had all the jades I needed. It was crazy. I missed those days. I just had to spend $300 on March because I didn't get her.
So I feel that's largely changed. Really, at least in my opinion, it doesn't feel like we get the same mileage out of our pulls that we did in the past. Honestly, it feels like characters seem to last for lesser amounts of time and also have a lot higher requirements to actually play them. So today, I'd like to give my thoughts on how I feel it's changed and also why I feel those changes aren't really that great for the players. I think the first thing we can discuss is something that pretty much every gacha seems to be using nowadays, and what I'm referring to here is something I mentioned a couple videos ago when talking about the state of HSR's meta, which is their balancing formula. To keep it brief for those of you unfamiliar, most gachas nowadays operate under a system where there is a base power floor for all the characters in the game, but it rises over time. Or in other words, it's basically the idea that as the game progresses and we get stronger, the game's difficulty will rise to match.
And basically what we're going to get at here is HSR has done this, but it's like 10 times, 10 times whatever this graph shows. It's been exponential growth, but the HSR, it starts like kind of going up and then like, I don't know, like 3.0, some later hits it, and then just spikes upward.
But every unit in the game has a theoretical height of power that they can reach, and certain units will naturally have higher heights than others, usually related to how recently
what'd they do to my boy Blade? Blade is not that short.
They were released. It's also particularly noticeable in terms of rarity, where 4-star units will generally fall off at some point.
True. No, Pela! Rest in peace. Silver Wolf better now, thank goodness. The fact that Pela was outscaling Silver Wolf for so long was an absolute, like, disgusting thing that happened in the game.
Or at the very least, they'll be replaced by 5-star units that can do what those 4-star units did, but, you know, better. What this all does...
Well, actually, no, because we just don't release 4-stars anymore. So the 5-stars can't outscale the 4-stars anymore because there are no 4-stars. so not really. It's more like 5-stars power creeping other 5-stars. But back in the day, sure.
Is increase the effective cost of each of the teams that we play. Like, getting a 4-star to E6 is something that will naturally happen over time, and therefore it's not really a big deal to fit them into different team compositions. But when they don't really cut...
I believe I have every character in the game E6, and I think most dolphins to whales who have played the game since 1.0 should have every character E6 by now, at least in the 4-star variety, of course.
Anymore, you have to replace them with a better unit, and that means more rolls that you have to spend. So basically, instead of the game working in a way where you can kind of go for whoever you want and get a light cone for your favorite on top of that, for example, it now runs in a manner where at some point you will have to spend your pulls to get a new character just to complete content that you were able to complete with other units in the past.
True.
In other, more simple terms, in my opinion, rolling for units and then getting their light cones used to feel like a luxury rather than a necessity, whereas now it kind of feels like the opposite.
And that's true. And I feel like nothing embodies that better than what we saw with March or Evernight. Bro, Evernight, if you don't get her light cone, you have no options. Straight up. I was lucky enough that somebody gifted me her light cone, but bros, Evernight's light cone options are so shit. For free-to-plays, you're just screwed if you don't get her light cone. Her options are Battle Pass, her signature, or other 5 stars. All the free-to-play ones for her are garbage. Nothing embodies that better than her. I think it started with, we all know it started with Acheron. Her light cone was the first one. It was like, oh crap, you need this to get good. And then we're seeing it more with later characters nowadays, where they almost require their E1s or their light cones in order to be good. An example is Tribby. Now Tribby still works fine, but her E1 is such a massive power scale that I'll never get, that it almost makes more sense to go for a Tribby Eidolon than to go for another 5-star character. Like, would you rather get a Tribby E1 or like a Cypher is what I mean, right? And there's a lot of other examples of characters that have huge power spikes with different light cones and E1s and all that. That it almost feels like a requirement in order to beat later stages of the game to get those things. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible. If you're very skilled at the game and you're really good, I'm sure it's still possible meshing some of these units together, but it just makes it a lot easier.
Like, I still remember at the beginning of the game when the super cool showcases people were doing were done with teams that didn't have a full lineup of 5 stars with their light cones and an S10 DDD or whatever. I remember when the 4 stars that
and now nowadays you're seeing showcases on Anomaly Arbitration with people with like S5 maxed out characters, like literally like 16 cost teams trying to beat the stupidest endgame of all time.
where meta slowly started to fall out of it as better and better characters were released. I remember when I rolled my first signature light cone for Fu Zhuan just because I liked her and not because she actually needed it. At least in my...
You can't do that nowadays. Bro, I haven't rolled a signature light cone for a character I liked in so long. I just get the meta ones, truthfully. Because you require them to beat endgame. It is what it is, boys. The only one who I got it for a character I liked was Sparkle, and then Kafka back in the day. After that, I haven't got a good light cone.
Opinion, it's not really like that anymore because it feels like we're now expected to have certain things to participate in different endgame content. I mean, think of how many characters want not even Hyacine, but just her light cone to function at max potential. Stuff like that just wasn't a thing in the past, and personally, I don't know if I like the fact that the game is...
Bro, I've been saying for a while now, I think I tweeted this the other day, if you don't have Hyacine, quit. Straight up, quit the game. It ain't worth it, bro. If you don't have a Hyacin, leave. It's just not worth it at all. That character's required for so much crap nowadays. Or at least it makes it significantly easier with her. Bro, it's insane what that character does comparatively to every other, like, sustain in the game.
Been moving in this way because, as I always say, it takes away the choices a player has when deciding what to roll for, and honestly, that's kind of just frustrating. Now, that said, to be fair to HSR here, this isn't a problem unique to this game specifically. Pretty much every mainstream gacha nowadays slowly filters out their lower rarity units and eventually replaces even higher...
Okay, well, just because everybody does it doesn't make it good. If all my homies jump off a bridge and then I jump off a bridge, I'm just as dumb as them, right?
Rarity units with new characters. For example, in Genshin, out of the 47 4-star characters in that game, I'd say only around 25% of them are actually frequently used. Wuwa hasn't even...
That's still better than Honkai Star Rail, to be fair.
In lower percentage, and ZZZ is slowly starting to filter out their 4 stars too.
Yeah.
Despite it being normal, I do still think it's something we need to keep in mind as we look at how the overall cost of teams have...
You know what, though? At least they get 4 stars, man. We don't get any. We haven't got one in a year. At least they get them.
risen over time. Something that is more unique to HSR, though, is the lack of 4-star characters in general.
Yeah.
I mean, being honest, HSR's 4-star characters aren't actually all that bad in the grand scheme of things, or at least
they aren't bad. They just don't exist. They're not a thing. There's Gallagher. Who else? Oh, Ting Yun. And Pela, I guess, if you don't have Silverwolf.
they weren't before they got shuffled out for better options. Hunt March, Gallagher, Ting Yun, Pella, Mose, all of those guys used to
Okay, bro was about to say used to be. I was gonna say there's no way you're calling Mozzarella and Hunt March good. You're tripping balls.
Be decent options, but due to Hoyo seemingly deciding to no longer release characters like them, it's put the game in a bit of a weird spot in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's hot.
That's hot.
Like, in an ideal world, as 4-star characters do eventually get filtered out, at the very least, new ones could come in to replace them as the alternative options to 5 stars that also come. For example, if Gallagher stops being good at some point, ideally there would be a Gallagher 2 coming in to kind of fill the niche of an easily accessible but, good enough sustainer for accounts that don't have any better options. We actually saw something like this happen previously with Gallagher effectively replacing Lynx during 2.x.
Yeah, rest in peace, Lynx.
But now, without this happening because they simply aren't being released anymore, there's just no alternatives to use besides a 5-star, so in essence it kind of becomes something like a double whammy. Not only are there 4-stars that we currently have basically moot unless your account is new or you hyper invest into them, but they also don't release any new ones to keep an influx of characters available for players to keep up with the current game state. And that's not even mentioning that 5-star characters aren't immune to this filtering. Think about it. How often do you use the meta characters from 2.x nowadays? How about from 1.x?
Never.
Characters can be filtered out at any point as new characters of their archetype release or as the meta shift.
Fuck, this shit makes me depressed, bro. Oh, man. Remember when you could just use, Sparkle, Acheron, and, a Silver Wolf, and, life would be fine? Oh, man, this shit makes me... You can't use Fei Zhao anymore. You can't use Sele anymore. You can't use Jing Yuan. Well, you could if you're coping beyond belief. Oh man, this video is just making me depressed, bro. Oh my gosh.
Away from whatever is currently being used. And frankly, that doesn't exactly feel amazing, and that's also why prior to the buffs back in 3.4, there was a ton of conversation about power creeping old characters out of relevance. I will say they're kinda counteracting.
3.4 buffs did help. Shout out to the 3.4 buffs. Those were big.
This with freebies, like how they've been giving us 5-star units like Archer and Dan Hang.
True.
But I mean, at least personally, I would much rather have a wider, diverse pool of units that consistently gets new additions rather than 2 freebie characters a year. At the end of the day, this is a team.
I think the other thing to discuss with the freebie units is, well, one of them is a sustain, which I think is big for a lot of accounts. I think Don Hang is actually going to be a big pickup. But you think about the other 2 they gave, one of them was Dr. Ratio, dog shit now. The other one was Archer, who requires another character to be good. If you don't have Sparkle, that character is ass. We all know it's true. Now, I love Sparkle, but you shouldn't require another 5-star in order for a free character to be good. It's a little outrageous, because then at that point, he's not free anymore. Well, he is, I guess, if you use him with Hanya. And if you're doing that, honestly, respect.
Game where you need multiple teams to clear all the content. For a long time now, it's only been 2 teams or 8 characters, but with the new game mode Anomaly Arbitration that's coming soon, you'll need a 3rd team or 12 characters total if you want to participate. And I do want to clarify.
And you'll need Castris, Hyacinth, Evernight, and Trivia or RemTB in order to beat the final stage. And if you don't have all of those characters, you lose. Give up.
Obviously, I am not trying to say that it's somehow impossible or whatever to have 12 built units. Unless you're new, you probably have a few different teams built from past metas, but I am saying that only getting 2 out of the 12 characters you need isn't exactly a whole lot in comparison to how it used to be, where the requirements to clear were significantly lower in terms of overall team cost. And that right there is a decent segue into talking about another point here, which is that, again, this is a team game. It's not like as we've gone on or as the game has progressed, you've only ever had to replace just your DPS, for example. Usually that DPS will come with a new team requirement. Like, if you want to run Break, I hope you have Ron May. If you want to run Hybrid Carry, I hope you got Sunday. If you want to run an HP character, well, I hope you have Hyacinth. Basically, what I'm saying here is that the characters nowadays are designed in a way where they don't function on their own, or to be more specific, they don't function to their full potential outside of the team they're intended to be played in. And really, I don't...
There's a few characters who fit out of that meta, but for the most part, he's right. Yeah, for sure. But this is exactly what we just talked about with Archer and Sparkle, where they gave away a free character, but in order to play that free character, you need a paid character. And a lot of characters nowadays, well, they come in 2s, right? So like Castra's Hyacinth, Sunday, or originally it was Jing Yuan, but now it was Aglia. A lot of characters come in 2s, and if you don't get one of each of those 2s, well, then you just can't play the team.
I don't think that was ever that big of a problem until somewhere in the middle of 2.x with break followed by follow-up teams, and it's definitely continued to happen as we've gone into 3.x. What makes this worse, in my opinion, is that now, unlike that period of time back in 2.x, we don't have the 4-star characters that made both of those comps more accessible, like Mose or Hunt Marsh for follow-up, and the HMC or Gallagher for break. And yes, I am actually counting the MC as a 4-star there. Really, the point I'm trying to make here is that the cost for teams isn't a gradual line where after a certain amount of time you just have to get one new character and then you wait until the next specific time you have to get another one. It's instead more like a step graph, where if you want to play a character, then you need to get tons of other things for that unit, so it's a large increase in the amount of things you have to roll for all at once.
True.
All in all, at least in my opinion, this results in another reason that pulls don't feel like they have the same mileage that they used to.
Bro is actually spitting facts right now. This is crazy.
And honestly, at this point, it kind of feels like the requirements to play one character aren't just get the character anymore, because you need a specific team for them, and that's not even mentioning light cones, because that is just a whole other can of worms due to how specific signature light cones are now.
And this is why you're always told as a free-to-play, you gotta vertically invest. Vertical investment, boys. I put out this really funny tweet yesterday, or at least I think it was funny. Hey guys, I'm a free-to-play player in Honkai Star Rail, and I vertically invested in follow-up meta. What'd I do? You wanna know what the first response was? KY. If I vertically invested in follow-up attacks back in 2.0, well, my account's done now. I failed. Now, you can vertically invest in 2 teams, or even 3 teams if you want, if you're smart enough, or if you get lucky enough. But all those teams can become nuanced in like a patch, because we're moving on to a new meta, right? A new meta game. Maybe next patch, it's going to be all DOT based. Now, your follow-up team, dog crap. That HP team you have, well, it doesn't matter anymore because it's DOT based. And that break team you had, oh, well, it's DOT based, doesn't matter. So all 3 of those teams that you just vertically invested in, gone. They don't matter anymore. And that's literally what we just saw in the latest anomaly game mode, where they literally made a whole stage where if you didn't play DOT, you just lost. And that was it. There was no other comp that worked in that state. It was dot or lose. And that was just it. It was ridiculous. And we all know it. That cannot happen again. I think stage 2 of this was absolutely ridiculous, and they really shouldn't make a stage like it again, because having only one team work makes it basically impossible for like 80% of players. But anyways, I digress.
And also just how messed up the remembrance path as a whole is. I really do feel like the game has moved in a direction where things are almost becoming too specific, and as a result, you always have to keep investing in new things because there just aren't any other options. And as a result, unless you either skip an entire meta or, you know, spend money...
Me, unfortunately. Literally me.
It really doesn't end up feeling that great in my opinion. It kind of goes back to what I said earlier in this video. What used to feel like a luxury now feels like a necessity, and for the average player that gets their 90 pulls or so a patch, that necessity just isn't something that they can always get. One other thing that I feel is worth mentioning here is the lack of events and fun game modes that we've had pretty much since Amphorius launched. While the actual pulls we get per patch hasn't really changed all that much, I do think that despite that, the specification of teams alongside the lack of varied content throughout the game doesn't really lend itself to players enjoying themselves as much as they could be, or as much as they did in the past.
True.
Like, let's sort of ignore endgame for a second here. Back when the game launched, if you couldn't clear the endgame, there were a lot of main events that you could do, like the Ghost Hunting event or Ethereum Wars and stuff like that. And on top of that, we had relatively...
Ethereum Wars was so peak. Ethereum Wars was so good. I love that event. I don't know what we've done with events in HSR, man. I really don't. Seal Slammers was okay. The Bird arcade event was kind of fun. And other than that, there's nothing. It all is like little kid games, man. It's ridiculous. The new one that we have right now, the dinosaur one, is like Webkins, bro. It feels like it was made for toddlers. If you like it, that's great. It's not for me. I don't know what we're doing with HSR events, but there truly is nothing else other than the end game, and the story in this game at this moment in time is really what it feels like. Their events have gone drastically downhill, and it doesn't feel good. It really doesn't.
Consistent updates to the simulated universe with new worlds and also new game modes. Nowadays, though, that kind of content isn't really being released to the same extent that it used to, and personally, I feel this makes the disparity of needing all these new things and then more pulls to get those things worse. Like, here's a hypothetical example to explain what I mean. Let's say your favorite character back in 1.x was Kafka, because at least back then it felt like she was half the player base's favorite.
Yes, she was. And mine. Shout out Kafka. How can this actually not be your favorite character? As like a straight man, how can this not be your favorite character?
And let's also say that you hate Dot as a playstyle, so instead of using a normal build for Kafka, you ran a crit Kafka build. While you could still try to brute force content, it was significantly more difficult.
I miss my crit Kafka build. I had that build for so long, and now I just can't play it because I just get made fun of. Bro, I had crit Kafka for straight up like a year. Oh, I miss crit Kafka, man.
To do so, but you know where you didn't have to brute force? Simulated universe and events. The funny thing is that the example I gave wasn't actually a hypothetical, because one of my friends actually did that and ran crit Kafka all the way through the highest difficulties of Swarm Disaster back then, and he also played—
I am a knower. Crit Kafka was meta as shit, man. It was so good.
It in pretty much every combat event that ran. Later on, he did the same through Golden Gears and also other events like the Ghost Hunting one, and while he doesn't play anymore, I'm sure he would have kept going with that same build and playstyle if new modes were added. But they really just haven't been. I mean, sure, we've had some updates to Divergent Universe, and we do also get some events, but the vast majority of those updates are small, and the events are usually mini-games rather than something your characters can actually interact with. So that leaves the actual endgame modes, and I guess story as well, as the only content that you have to play your characters in with weird builds. Yeah. But the endgame is scaled beyond the point where super weird builds can still comfortably make it through it. For the
They can't. They can't. If you're not using like the most optimal build of all time, you're just not beating the latest endgame. Straight up. MOC 12 and AA, straight up. If you are not using the meta of meta, it's just not, it's just not doable.
Players like my friend with Crit Kafka, or for a newer player that doesn't have all the units they need, or maybe for a player that just lost all their 50-50s and couldn't get a full team for their favorite new unit, well, there's just not a whole lot for them to actually do anymore. So when I'm talking about the disparity of needing all these pulls, I'm talking about it in the sense of some characters simply—
And that's why so many people quitting, right? It's because you lose a 50-50. Why would you continue? You lose the 50-50 for Hyacinth, all of a sudden your casters team doesn't work anymore. And you just have to play casters without Hyacinth. It's so shit. You're a free-to-play player. Yes! I just got my Aglia. Now all I need is a Sunday. Oh, I lost the 50-50. Okay, well, Aglia is now a dead character and I can't play her anymore.
Don't have content they're playable in without their special team, and therefore, despite the fact that the pulls have stayed relatively consistent across the game's lifespan, the fact of the matter is we really do just need more at this point to comfortably sustain accounts and all the different teams that are required now for different content. I will say we do have the Anomaly Arbitration mode releasing soon, which is actually new content, but it also appears to be more endgame content that those same weird builds or units without their best in—
So this was made before the endgame came out. I assume bro doesn't know. Yeah, it's a whale locked endgame. If you're not a whale, you can't beat it. so yeah.
A team won't really be able to participate in. There was also the Currency Wars game mode they announced that's coming in 3.7, but we know next to nothing about it, so it's basically just—
This looks cool. I'm hyped for that.
Now, I know all this is just a shot in the dark, and realistically, I'm just one guy ranting into the void here, but I do really think that the game has changed over the course of the 2 years it's been out, from one that had a lot of flexibility and diversity to a game that's significantly more specific in its requirements than it used to be, which results in a lot more pulls being required to comfortably play the game. That said, there are actually a lot of ways this could be solved that aren't just giving us, more rolling currency or whatever. I mean, the easiest one is just simply releasing more 4-stars that are accessible to players. I talked about this briefly earlier, but it is actually natural for characters to leave the meta after a time, otherwise it just never really develops. But as that happens, new accessible characters should replace them, and I don't feel like that's currently happening at a fast enough pace, even though we do get some freebies. A more difficult route would be trying to actually balance the game.
You ain't happy with 1 4-star a year? I was happy with 1 4-star a year. I'm like, oh, maybe we'll get one in the next 2, possibly.
But that's a whole other point that's been talked to death now by multiple other videos of my own, and not to mention by other creators. And lastly, the other option is to just make characters that have less specific needs and therefore reintroduce more flexibility to the game. Like, don't get me wrong, Finon is a very, very cool character, but him removing the rest of his teammates from the field makes him also have very, very specific needs that not many other characters have. As another example, Hyacine being the only relevant character that buffs team-wide HP makes her invaluable for those HP teams compared to other options, and Evernight is another example in that she's hyper-specific to teams with Memo Sprites.
Yeah.
While some of these characters are generically useful like Hyacine, that's more just because she's a busted character in general, rather than her actually being intended to be generic. I mean, who knew that a healer dealing just as much damage as a main DPS would be kinda broken?
You
but
think?
Really, in all seriousness, I don't know what the actual answer here is. Like, I've given my ideas, but at the end of the day, again, I know I'm basically just ranting into the void here. With that said, what I do know is that the pull economy does.
And that's kind of what we're all doing, right? We're all ranting in the void. They don't actually care about our opinions, to be honest. All of this is meaningless at the end of the day. It's like, y'all remember that talking to the brick wall meme? That's what we're doing right now, straight up.
Doesn't feel amazing right now as a player, so I kind of just wanted to talk about it and get my thoughts and feelings out there about this. Anyway, that's all my thoughts, and I appreciate you listening if you made it this far. If you have some thoughts of your own on this topic, I'd love to hear about it, so feel free to leave a comment down below or join my Discord link down in the description to talk with me about it.
Bro, actually goated video, to be honest. Yeah, nah, that was actually goated. I feel like bro conceptualized all my thoughts so well into one video. To be honest, amazing video. Please go subscribe to that channel. Link will be in the description below. But anyways, boys, thank you all for coming out to today's video. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you guys want to have a discussion in the comments, I'd love to hear y'all talk about it. But anyways, that's gonna be it for me. See y'all later. Peace out.